Great. I think we're just about ready to start. So welcome to today's session on how will AI transform your data platform. So my name is Ben Jarvis. I'm CTO at Adatis, and I've been with Adatis for the last 6 years, where I've spent my time architecting and delivering data platform solutions on Azure.
Manoj Matharu. I'm a sales engineer for CluedIn, and here with our awesome partner, Adatis. So I'll let Ben.
Cool. So for today's session, we'll quickly start with an introduction to what AI is. Then we'll start by looking at what a typical data platform architecture looks like. And then we'll look at where some of the key time sinks are when you're building out a data platform and understand where AI can potentially help us. And then hopefully we'll spend the bulk of the session doing some quick demos of some different tools that can help you out. So what is AI? So if you've been around for the last couple of years or so, you've probably seen articles like this, which came out around the time that ChatGPT was released. And there was lots of hype around it, saying that people are going to lose their jobs and it's going to automate lots of whole industries and remove them. But essentially, I asked ChatGPT what the definition of AI is, and this is what it came out with. And it's basically the development of computer systems that can perform tasks that typically require some human intelligence. So in my view, it's not really completely automating jobs away. It's kind of given us that ability to automate some of those mundane tasks, and we still need that human interaction to actually make a decision. So today we'll be covering how AI can impact a data platform. And when we're typically building a data platform, we've got lots of different components that we need to be concerned about. So we've got the actual data sources that we're ingesting from. We've got some kind of ingestion engine that's taking data out of those data sources and bringing it into our platform. Then we need to do things like cleanse that data and validate it and transform it before we serve it up to users and before those users can actually start interacting with that data and making use of it. And to do that, we need to use lots of different components. So for ingestion, we might have something like Data Factory. For the cleansing and validation, we might be using a tool like Databricks with something like CluedIn for master data management and data quality. On the transformation side, we might be using tools like Databricks or Fabric. And then we've got various other bits that go into that. So we've got our data lake, which could be in ADLS Gen 2. We've got our governance layer, which you might be using something like Purview or Unity Catalog. And then we've got the actual serving layer, which is generally made up of something like Fabric, Power BI, or Databricks. So we've got lots of different components in there, and there's lots of things that we need to put together to actually build that platform out. So as we're building our platform, there's lots of time sinks, and there's lots of tasks in there that take us a lot of time to actually do. So the first is actually creating and deploying our platform. So we need to spin up the infrastructure. We need to create some of that boilerplate code that's going to process our data and manage things like metadata. And then we've got various maintenance tasks we need to do to keep the platform running. Then we've got to transform our data, and we might be using tools like SQL or PySpark to do that. And doing that, we need to write some complex business logic. We've got to join lots of data sets together, and then we actually need to understand how that data fits together. Then it comes to cleansing the data, which is where tools like CluedIn come in. So we need to try and build up that single source of truth and master that data. And as part of that, we might need to define some cleansing rules or do some fuzzy matching or actually try to identify some data quality issues in those data sets before we can actually start to build that single source of truth. And then finally, it's the bit that the actual users are involved in. So that's where we're analyzing the data. So they might be creating reports. They might be doing some exploratory analysis on those data sets. And they might want to just ask ad hoc questions of that data, like, what were my sales figures last month, or what is my sales pipeline for the next quarter? And an AI can help us in a number of these different use cases. And that's really what we want to use today's session for, is to demonstrate some of those particular use cases where AI can help us. So we're going to dive into the demos now. So I'll start by kicking off with GitHub Copilot, which can help us on some of the development tasks. And then I'll go over to Databricks Assistant, which is, again, similar and will allow us to automate some of those mundane dev tasks. I'll then pass over to Manoj, who will cover off CluedIn and some of the AI capabilities they've got in their tool. And then we'll have a quick look at Power BI Copilot, which can help us with some of that exploratory analysis and allow us to actually create reports and build and actually make use of that data really quickly. So I'll hop over to the demos now. So we'll start within Visual Studio Code. So we've got GitHub Copilot here installed in our VS Code instance. And one of the first tasks that... Oh, so it dropped off. Ah, there we go. Cool. So yeah, we've got GitHub Copilot installed in our VS Code instance. So this can help us automate some of those dev tasks and write some of that boilerplate code really quickly. So yeah, as I was saying, when we're spinning up a platform, one of the first things we need to do is deploy our infrastructure. And as part of that, we might need to deploy things like a data lake, our Databricks workspace, so we can actually start to transform that data. And we don't want to be doing that through the Azure portal by clicking around in the portal. So we want to have some good infrastructure as code to automate that process. So with GitHub Copilot, rather than us having to build that code ourselves, we can get it to automate that task and at least give us a starting point and give us an initial template that we can then modify. So what I've done here is use the inline prompt, and basically I'm asking it to build a bicep template that will deploy a data lake store Gen 2 account with a container and deploy us a Databricks workspace. So I can give it that prompt and hit enter, and then it will basically build that template for me. So it's building out that bicep template. And this is by no means something that you deploy to production straight away. We need to make some modifications to it and make it production ready. But at least it gives us that starting point. So rather than us having to write that code ourselves and look through the documentation to work out how we deploy those resources, we can automate that process. So the next demo that I wanted to show is transforming some data. So we've got a basic CSV file here that's got some flight details. So we've got flight number, we've got gate number, number of passengers, and the arrival time. And this is in CSV format, but say we want to convert it into a JSON format and do some basic transformation, we can ask GitHub Copilot to do that for us. So I'll just grab my prompt. And using the chat window, which is here, I can basically give a prompt to GitHub Copilot and ask it to write a script that will read in my CSV file and convert it to a JSON file with a set of attributes. And those attributes are basically the same ones that we've got in the CSV file, but I've done one basic transformation where I want it to split the date and time into two separate attributes. So if I hit enter on this now, that will pull my workspace structure into GitHub Copilot as context for the models, and then it will build that, it will generate that code for me. So it should give us a script. And it's written us a Python script that will basically use pandas to read that CSV file in, do that basic transformation of splitting out the date and time, and then it will write that into a JSON file. And if I run that script now, it should generate our JSON file for us. Just give it a few seconds to run. And now if I format this, and get rid of that, we've now got our JSON file. So it's added those attributes that we've asked it to, and then it's done that split to split the date and time into two separate attributes. The final area that I wanted to show in GitHub Copilot is just having the ability to generate documentation and tests for our code. So in this example, we've got a simple Python class that has some various different functions that are doing operations against numbers. So we've got some functions to multiply numbers, we've got some functions to add and subtract, and various other things. And obviously we've just written this code, and we might want to add some documentation to it to make it simpler for other developers to understand. So what we can do here is bring up the prompt in Copilot and use a /doc command, and that would basically generate a set of Python doc strings for us to document all of these functions. So now when somebody goes to use those functions, they get the IntelliSense with the full documentation to show them what's going on. We can also get it to generate unit tests. So if I run /test, that will then create a test class for us. And in this test class, it's passing test data into all of those functions and allowing us to unit test them. So again, if I run these tests, that will execute the test for me. And I've got that basic set of test coverage already just out of the box, auto-generated for me. So the next tool that I wanted to demo is the Databricks Assistant. And this is very similar to Copilot. And basically, it will allow us to generate code within our Databricks workspace. So what I'll do is just add a new cell here. And one of the common tasks that we might want to do in our Databricks environment is run vacuum commands to clean up our tables. So what I'm doing here is just running a quick prompt to ask it to iterate through all databases and tables in my workspace and run a vacuum command. And if I hit enter on this, it will then go away and generate that code for me. And that's now ready to go, and I can just run that code, and that will go and clean up all of my Delta tables for me and do that maintenance operation. And similar to VS Code, we can also get it to explain our code. So this is a very simple example, but if we use /explain on a cell, it will basically explain that code to us and tell us what that cell is doing. So if we've inherited some code that's not written in such a great way, we can get Databricks to document that for us and give us a rough idea of what it's doing. I'll pass over to Mano now to show you some of the AI capabilities in CluedIn.
Okay, thanks, Ben. And that's really cool, right? You know, it's it will actually save you a lot of time, right? And that's the whole point about AI.
Yeah, definitely.
It's saving us time to actually work on more interesting things, I guess. Yeah, so CluedIn is first is a modern master data management platform, and I'm not going to go into what CluedIn does. You know, can it pretty much explain itself, but where we are with it, and and this is a typical user journey of what a data engineer, business steward, data scientist might go through with using CluedIn. You know, ingesting your data from the left-hand side, either with APIs, other sort of pipelines, and have where you got bubbles number 1, 2, 3. You can have actually apply certain rules around your data, things around data quality, data duplication, data remediation, and one of the key areas where we're looking at is adding the Copilot is to explain your data, being able to think about what that business steward. Why am I looking at this data set? How can I map this data set? Adding areas of automation mapping and things and stuff, where you can also add things like survivorship rules. So giving you that complete journey with your data. And just to go into CluedIn, for example, if I do go into one of the data sets, and I can go into, like, I'm going to go into this SAP data set here, right? And again, SAP, a difficult system, understanding what the data is, a lot of the column names, acronyms, German acronyms, everybody always gets a bit confused by them. With CluedIn's assistant, we can simply come in here and we can go into the assistant and say, describe this data set. And using the OpenAI functionality, an OpenAI resource that we've added into CluedIn, attached to CluedIn, it will give me a description of this data set. Simple profiling, right? A little deep profiling for a business steward. And instead of having to go into the platform, look at profiling, look at trends, look at columns, look at what they're doing, this gives you that kind of that explanation of the data as well. Also, if I wanted to map the data, I could actually do that as well. Let me see if I can. Yeah, so I could actually use the OpenAI assistant, Copilot, to map the data. So if I was to, for example, you've got the SAP column names, and I wanted to map them into some sort of common model, I could actually use the OpenAI assistant to actually map them into a common model, which it will do for me. So if I just go into, I'm just going to close the assistant, go into map. Might need to refresh this. as you can see, they've just that's mapped those columns into a common model for me, and it's actually used, and it will create those column names like material groups, material number, material type. You know, it's picked those up from the assistant without having to actually configure any mappings or column names and things like that. So it's actually made that mapping process for SAP easier for you with the CluedIn assistant. So we're able to map the SAP tables for you as well with the CluedIn assistant. Yeah. Thanks, Ben.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was really good. So I know, like, we spend lots of time with SAP having to trawl through documentation to understand how the columns map. So just being able to use AI to automate that for you is really useful. So we've got a few minutes left. So the final demo I wanted to show is Power BI Copilot. So this obviously sits at the end of the process where we've got our data transformed and we want to actually hand it to the users to start building some reports and playing with the data sets. So what I've got here is just a standard AdventureWorks data set. So this has just got some sales data in and various other bits around products and customers. And I've just created a blank Power BI report here. But if I go into the Copilot button on Power BI, I can then ask it to, so I can ask it to suggest content for this report for me. So if I click that button, it will give me some suggestions on the kind of analysis I can do on that data. So, you know, we've got an example for sales performance analysis, or we might want to look at how our customers